Welcome back, UPSC aspirants. It's day one of our deep dives into the most important current affairs from February 2nd, 2025. For those of you aiming for those top ranks, this daily analysis is crucial.
Absolutely. We're going to break down these events not just as news, but as potential discussion points for your UPSC interviews or essay
Oh
questions.
yeah, you could be asked about anything. So let's make sure you're prepared for it all. First up, we have a fascinating study about the Sundarbans mangroves.
Everyone knows they're important, but this research from IIT Bombay and other institutions reveals just how resilient they really are.
Yeah, it's remarkable. They can recover from cyclones in a matter of weeks.
And even with pollution impacting nutrient levels, they remain incredibly productive.
It's almost like they have a secret weapon, and that's where this idea of memory in plants comes in.
Right. The study found that these mangroves can actually remember past stressors, which helps them adapt to future challenges.
It's like they're learning from experience.
Essentially, plants can store information about past events like droughts or extreme temperatures.
And this memory allows them to respond more effectively when similar situations happen again.
In the case of the Sundarbans, this could be crucial for their survival as climate change brings more unpredictable weather patterns.
So it's not just a cool scientific fact. It actually has practical implications for conservation and understanding how ecosystems might adapt to a changing climate, which, as you know, is a huge topic for the UPSC.
Absolutely. It makes you think, if mangroves can adapt, what does that tell us about the potential for resilience in other ecosystems? And what kind of conservation strategies can we develop based on this knowledge?
Those are great questions for all of us to consider. Now, before we move on, I think it's worth quickly recapping some key facts about mangroves for our listeners, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Good point. Mangroves are essentially trees and shrubs that thrive in saltwater environments along coastlines.
Right. They're incredibly important for coastal protection biodiversity, and they support the livelihoods of millions of people globally.
Exactly. And they're under threat from things like deforestation, pollution, and climate change, which makes their resilience even more important to understand.
Speaking of unique ecosystems, did you know that Gujarat has its own special type of mangrove forest?
Yes, the inland mangrove of Gunari. It's quite interesting.
That makes it so special.
Well, it's located far from the sea without any tidal inflow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, we usually think of mangroves as being right on the coast.
It's one of only 8 such ecosystems in the world, and it was recently declared Gujarat's first Biodiversity Heritage Site.
Wow, so it really highlights the diversity of India's natural heritage.
Absolutely. And for our listeners preparing for the UPSC, this is a great example to have in your back pocket, if you're asked about biodiversity or conservation efforts in India.
Exactly. Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about a topic that affects a huge portion of the Indian population's social security.
Right. The government has formed 3 committees to create a comprehensive social security model for workers. And this is particularly significant because the focus is on the unorganized sector.
Which is a massive undertaking considering the sheer size and diversity of India's workforce.
Exactly. It's a huge challenge to create a system that truly caters to the needs of everyone, particularly those who are often overlooked.
Like those in the informal economy. So many workers lack access to basic social security benefits.
Things like pensions, health insurance, maternity leave. It's a long list.
While there are existing schemes and the Code on Social Security from 2020, there's still a long way to go in terms of creating a truly inclusive system.
Absolutely. These committees have a lot to consider.
Like what specifically?
Well, they need to look at the unique challenges of the unorganized sector. The needs of workers in different regions and occupations can vary widely. Think about agricultural laborers, domestic workers, street vendors, the list goes on.
This aligns perfectly with the UPSC syllabus themes of social justice welfare schemes and labor reforms. It's the kind of topic that can easily come up in the exam, and the examiners will be looking for a deep understanding of the complexities involved.
It's not just about knowing the facts. It's about being able to analyze the challenges, evaluate the existing policies, and perhaps even suggest innovative solutions.
Right. Now, shifting from Social Security to the overall economic picture, we can't ignore the economic survey for 2024-25, which was just presented.
It's a key document for understanding the government's economic outlook and policy direction.
What were some of the key takeaways for you?
Well, the main message seems to be the emphasis on deregulation as a driver for domestic growth. They're really pushing for simplifying regulations to foster innovation and attract investment.
And that's interesting because it implies a certain trust in market forces to lead the way. But at the same time, the survey acknowledges that the global economic environment is not very favorable right now. So how do those two ideas reconcile?
That's a great question. It definitely seems like a bit of a balancing act. The survey does highlight concerns about rising trade protectionism and geopolitical uncertainties.
And of course, there's the issue of China's dominance in manufacturing, which poses a direct challenge to India's own ambitions in that sector.
Exactly. So it's a complex landscape. The survey projects GDP growth at 6.4%, which sounds optimistic.
But it remains to be seen how those global factors will play out.
Right. And it's important to note that the survey also emphasizes infrastructure development as a key priority. They're calling for increased investment in areas like transportation, energy, and logistics.
Which makes sense if they want to boost economic growth and attract more businesses.
Exactly. All of this is crucial for UPSC aspirants to understand. You need to be able to analyze the government's economic policies, their growth models, and their approach to international trade.
It's not enough to just memorize statistics. You need to grasp the underlying logic and be able to critically evaluate the potential outcomes.
Now, for a topic that delves into ethical and legal complexities, the right to die with dignity, Karnataka has joined Kerala in allowing terminally ill patients this right, following that landmark Supreme Court ruling from 2018.
It's a really sensitive issue that sparks intense debate and raises questions about individual autonomy, medical ethics, and the role of the state in such personal decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Can you break down the key points of the Supreme Court ruling for us?
Sure. The court essentially recognized the right to die with dignity as a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. They also upheld the legal validity of passive euthanasia, distinguishing it from active euthanasia.
So for those who aren't familiar, passive euthanasia is about withdrawing life-sustaining treatment, while active euthanasia involves taking specific actions to end a patient's life. And active euthanasia remains illegal in India.
That's right. And there are specific guidelines from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare that outline the procedures for withdrawing life support in terminally ill patients. These guidelines emphasize things like informed consent medical boards and ethical oversight.
So there are safeguards in place to ensure that the process is carried out ethically and with the patient's best interests in mind.
Exactly. It's a really important distinction to make.
Now let's move into the world of technology and governance, where we've seen some interesting developments with Aadhaar. The government has amended the rules to allow private entities to use Aadhaar authentication for service delivery.
This move is all about promoting ease of living and fostering innovation in the digital space. They want to make things more convenient and efficient for citizens.
So instead of multiple forms of identification, a single Aadhaar authentication could streamline a whole range of services.
Exactly. Think about things like e-commerce travel bookings, healthcare, even hospitality. The idea is to simplify these processes and reduce the need for paperwork.
And the amendments have outlined a streamlined approval process with the UIDAI and the Ministry of Electronics and IT playing key roles.
Right. They're trying to make it easier for businesses to integrate Aadhaar authentication into their systems.
But of course, with any new technology, especially one that involves personal data, there are concerns.
Absolutely. Data privacy and security are major concerns. While the government argues these amendments will benefit citizens and promote innovation, there's always the potential for misuse of data.
It's a delicate balance between leveraging technology for good governance and protecting individual rights.
Exactly, and it's something that needs to be carefully considered.
Now we're going to shift gears into rapid-fire mode with our Quick Hit segment. We'll cover a range of important news stories from around the world.
First up, we have geopolitical tension brewing in Africa. The Rwandan-supported M23 rebel group is advancing in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they're getting closer to a strategically important military airport.
This is a situation that has the potential to escalate and further destabilize the region. What's the background on this conflict?
Well, this is a long-standing conflict with deep roots. It's essentially a proxy war with various regional powers backing different factions, vying for control of the DRC's vast mineral resources.
So it's not just a simple rebellion. There are larger geopolitical forces at play.
Exactly, and it's something that could have wider implications for the region and even beyond.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Now for some exciting news from the world of science. Scientists have managed to detect antineutrinos using a tiny detector.
This is a major breakthrough in particle physics. Antineutrinos are incredibly difficult to detect because they barely interact with matter.
So what does this discovery mean for the field of physics?
It opens up new avenues for studying these elusive particles and understanding the fundamental nature of the universe.
And it's especially exciting for India because we have our own neutrino observatory under construction.
Absolutely. This project aims to study neutrinos from cosmic sources and could lead to some groundbreaking discoveries in astrophysics.
It's a testament to India's growing scientific capabilities and its contributions to cutting-edge research.
Okay, let's zoom back to Earth for a moment and celebrate some good news for wetland conservation. India has added 4 new Ramsar sites, bringing the total to an impressive 89.
That's fantastic news. Can you remind our listeners what the Ramsar Convention is all about?
Sure, it's an international treaty for the conservation and sustainable use of wetlands. Wetlands are incredibly important ecosystems that provide a wide range of benefits. They're essential for biodiversity, water regulation, and they even help mitigate climate change.
So this is a significant step forward for environmental conservation in India.
Absolutely. And it shows a commitment to protecting these valuable ecosystems.
Speaking of steps forward, the Indian Railways has launched a new super app called SwaRail.
It's designed to be a one-stop shop for rail passengers, integrating services like ticket booking, checking train schedules, ordering food, and accessing all sorts of travel information.
It's a great example of how technology can be used to improve public services and make life easier for citizens.
Now, for a bit of cultural immersion, let's take a virtual trip to the Araku Valley in Andhra Pradesh, where the Araku Utsav is currently underway.
This is a tribal festival that celebrates the unique culture and traditions of the Araku tribes. The valley itself is known for its stunning natural beauty, its coffee plantations, and its rich biodiversity.
It's a great opportunity to learn about the diverse cultural heritage of India.
Okay, back to the world of medicine now, where there's been some promising news. A new non-opioid painkiller has received approval from the U.S. FDA.
This is a significant development in the fight against the opioid crisis, which has had devastating consequences in many countries.
So what makes this new painkiller so promising?
Well, it's a non-opioid, which means it doesn't carry the same risk of addiction and overdose as traditional opioid painkillers.
So it could provide much-needed relief for people suffering from chronic pain without the harmful side effects.
Exactly. This is a major step forward in pain management.
Now, switching gears to the financial sector, the Reserve Bank of India has penalized the India Post Payments Bank for regulatory lapses.
This action highlights the importance of regulatory compliance in the financial sector. Even institutions playing a vital role in financial inclusion need to adhere to the rules and regulations set by the central bank.
It's about maintaining the integrity and stability of the financial system.
Right, and ensuring that everyone is playing by the rules.
Now let's turn our attention to a recurring environmental issue, ammonia pollution in the Yamuna River.
The Yamuna River Basin Authority has highlighted the persistent problem of high ammonia levels in the river, which is a serious threat to water quality and public health.
What are the main sources of this pollution?
The primary culprits are untreated sewage and industrial discharge. It's a complex problem that requires a multi-pronged approach to address.
What kind of strategies are being considered to tackle this issue?
Well, there's a need for better wastewater treatment, stricter enforcement of environmental regulations, and greater cooperation among the states that share the Yamuna River Basin.
It's a reminder that environmental challenges often require collaborative efforts to find solutions.
And finally, for a glimpse into the future of biotechnology, we have some fascinating news from OpenAI. They've developed a model that enhances what are known as Yamanaka factors.
Now, I've heard of Yamanaka factors, but can you explain what they are for our listeners?
Sure, Yamanaka factors are a set of proteins that can reprogram adult cells into stem cells. This was a groundbreaking discovery that earned Shinya Yamanaka a Nobel Prize back in 2012.
So essentially, they can turn back the clock on cells, making them behave like stem cells again.
Exactly. And this has huge implications for regenerative medicine drug discovery and a whole range of other fields.
So what has OpenAI done to enhance these Yamanaka factors?
They've developed a computational model that can predict and optimize the performance of these factors, making them even more effective at reprogramming cells.
This is pretty cutting-edge stuff.
It is, and it has the potential to revolutionize the field of biotechnology. It's definitely something to watch closely.
And with that, we'll wrap up part 1 of our deep dive into the key events from February 2nd, 2025. Be sure to join us for part 2, where we'll continue our analysis and explore these topics in even greater depth. Okay, let's pick up where we left off yesterday with a closer look at the implications of the economic survey for 2024-25, especially for you UPSC aspirants.
Right. It's not just about the headline figures like the projected GDP growth of 6.4%. You need to dig deeper into the underlying trends and policy recommendations.
So let's do that. One thing that stood out to me was the emphasis on deregulation as a driver for domestic growth.
Exactly. The survey really pushes this idea of simplifying regulations to foster innovation, attract investment, and boost economic activity.
But isn't there a risk that deregulation could lead to exploitation of workers or environmental damage? I mean, especially in a country like India where enforcement mechanisms can be weak.
That's a valid concern, and the survey does acknowledge the need for appropriate safeguards. But their overall argument is that excessive regulations stifle entrepreneurship and hinder economic growth.
So it's about finding that balance between promoting economic freedom and ensuring social and environmental protections.
Exactly. And that's a key theme that runs through many of the survey's recommendations. Another important aspect is the focus on infrastructure development. The survey highlights the need for increased investment in areas like transportation, energy, and logistics.
Which makes sense if you want to create a more competitive economy and attract foreign investment.
Absolutely. And they also stress the importance of private sector participation in infrastructure projects.
So it's not just about relying on government funding. They're looking to leverage private capital as well.
Right. And this ties into their broader vision of a more market-driven economy. Now, while the survey is generally optimistic about India's growth prospects, it also acknowledges the challenges posed by the global economic environment.
Right. There's a lot of uncertainty out there with rising trade protectionism, geopolitical tensions, and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of China's dominance in manufacturing, which poses a significant challenge to India's own manufacturing ambitions.
So how does the survey address these challenges?
Well, it emphasizes the need for India to focus on its strengths, like its young workforce and its growing digital economy. It also calls for greater integration into global value chains and for diversifying export markets.
So essentially it's about adapting to the changing global landscape and finding ways to compete effectively.
Right. And this is where a deep understanding of economic concepts and policy frameworks becomes crucial for UPSC aspirants.
Exactly. You need to be able to analyze these trends, evaluate the government's strategies, and articulate your own well-informed opinions. Okay, let's move on to a topic that's been in the news a lot lately, the right to die with dignity.
This is a complex and sensitive issue with profound ethical, legal, and social implications.
And it's something that UPSC aspirants should be prepared to discuss in detail.
Absolutely. The Supreme Court's 2018 ruling recognizing the right to die with dignity as a fundamental right was a landmark decision.
But it also raised a lot of questions about how this right should be implemented in practice.
Right. The court upheld the validity of passive euthanasia, which involves withdrawing life-sustaining treatment, but active euthanasia, which involves taking specific actions to end a patient's life, remains illegal in India.
And there are strict guidelines from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare that outline the procedures for withdrawing life support. These guidelines emphasize things like informed consent, medical boards, and ethical oversight.
So it's a very carefully regulated process designed to ensure that the patient's wishes are respected while also safeguarding against any potential abuse.
Right. Now, this issue often sparks intense debate with strong arguments on both sides.
Absolutely. Some people believe that individuals have an absolute right to choose how and when they die, especially if they're suffering from a terminal illness. Others argue that life is sacred and that we should focus on providing palliative care and support to those who are nearing the end of their lives.
So it's not a simple black and white issue.
No, it's a very nuanced debate, and it's important for UPSC aspirants to understand the different perspectives and be able to articulate their own views in a thoughtful and balanced way.
Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about a topic that's at the intersection of technology governance and individual rights. The government's decision to allow private entities to use Aadhaar authentication for service delivery.
This is a move that's been both praised and criticized.
Right. The government argues that it will promote ease of living and foster innovation in the digital space.
They envision a world where a single Aadhaar authentication can streamline a whole range of services from e-commerce and travel bookings to healthcare and even hospitality.
Which sounds convenient in theory, but there are concerns about the potential risks to privacy and data security.
Absolutely. Critics worry that giving private companies access to Aadhaar data could lead to misuse or even data breaches.
Especially given that India doesn't yet have a comprehensive data protection law.
That's right. So it's a delicate balancing act between promoting digital innovation and safeguarding individual rights.
And it's a debate that's likely to continue as India's digital economy evolves.
Now let's move on to our quick hit segment where we'll cover a range of important news stories from around the world. First up, we have a development that could have major implications for the global fight against the opioid crisis. A new non-opioid painkiller has received approval from the US FDA.
This is big news considering the devastating impact of opioid addiction in many countries.
Absolutely. Opioids are highly effective for pain relief, but they also carry a significant risk of addiction and overdose. This new non-opioid alternative offers hope for people suffering from chronic pain without those same risks.
It's a breakthrough that could potentially save countless lives.
Now, shifting our focus to India's financial sector, the Reserve Bank of India has penalized the India Post Payments Bank for regulatory lapses.
This action highlights the importance of regulatory compliance, even for institutions that are playing a crucial role in financial inclusion.
Right. It's about maintaining the integrity and stability of the financial system and ensuring that everyone is playing by the rules.
Now let's turn our attention to a recurring environmental challenge in India, ammonia pollution in the Yamuna River.
The Yamuna River Basin Authority has sounded the alarm about the persistent problem of high ammonia levels, which pose a serious threat to both water quality and public health.
It's a complex issue with multiple contributing factors.
Right. The main culprits are untreated sewage and industrial discharge. And it's not just a problem for Delhi, it affects multiple states along the Yamuna River Basin.
So it's a challenge that requires coordinated action and interstate cooperation.
Exactly. And finally, let's end on a note of scientific progress. Researchers at OpenAI have developed a model that enhances the performance of Yamanaka factors.
Now, for those who need a refresher, Yamanaka factors are a set of proteins that can reprogram adult cells into stem cells.
This discovery revolutionized the field of regenerative medicine and earned Shinya Yamanaka a Nobel Prize back in 2012.
So what's so significant about OpenAI's new model?
Well, it essentially makes Yamanaka factors even more effective at reprogramming cells. This has huge implications for a range of fields, from regenerative medicine and drug discovery to protein engineering and disease modeling.
It's a great example of how artificial intelligence is being used to push the boundaries of scientific research.
And it highlights the rapid pace of innovation in the field of biotechnology.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the current affairs of February 2nd, 2025, any final thoughts for our UPSC aspirants?
I think the key takeaway is that everything is connected.
Right. We've covered a wide range of topics, but they all tie into those broader themes that are so important for the UPSC exam.
Exactly. Like sustainable development. We saw it in the context of those resilient mangroves in the Sundarbans.
And the challenges of pollution in the Yamuna River.
The ethical dilemmas surrounding the right to die with dignity.
Even the economic survey's push for deregulation. It all comes back to finding that balance between economic growth, social justice, and environmental sustainability.
And that's a key theme that you should keep in mind as you analyze current events and prepare for your exam.
It's not just about memorizing facts and figures. It's about understanding the interconnectedness of these issues and being able to think critically about the implications.
Exactly. The UPSC examiners want to see that you can connect the dots, that you can see the bigger picture, and that you can articulate your own well-informed opinions.
So as you continue your preparation, I encourage you to go beyond the headlines. Dig deeper into these topics, explore different perspectives, and challenge yourself to think critically.
And don't be afraid to engage in discussions with your peers or with mentors. Bouncing ideas off of each other can really help solidify your understanding and refine your arguments.
It's all about developing that analytical mindset that's so crucial for success in the UPSC exam.
Absolutely. And remember, the UPSC isn't just about testing your knowledge. It's about assessing your potential to be a future leader, someone who can analyze complex issues, make sound judgments, and contribute to the betterment of society.
So as you study, keep that broader purpose in mind. Think about how you can use your knowledge and skills to make a positive impact on the world.
Because ultimately, that's what truly matters. It's not just about acing an exam, it's about using your education to serve a greater purpose.
Well said. And with that, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the current affairs of February 2nd, 2025. We hope you found this analysis insightful and helpful for your UPSC preparation.
Best of luck with your studies, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for another round of in-depth analysis.
Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep striving for excellence.